A magnitude 5.5 earthquake has struck the central Peruvian Andes, killing 5 people, injuring 32, and forcing nearly 400 residents from their homes. It hit the Mantaro Valley in the Junin region late on Saturday the 18th of July, at 21:24 local time, which is 2:24 on Sunday the 19th in Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC, the global time standard. The United States Geological Survey, the USGS, put the magnitude at 5.5. Peru's own Geophysical Institute, the IGP, later settled on 5.4. That is a moderate quake. But in a cluster of small Andean towns built largely of mud brick, it was enough to collapse dozens of homes, split a church that had stood since 1565, and leave hundreds of people exposed to the Andean cold. Aftershocks are still being recorded, and damaged buildings remain at risk. Magnitude measures the energy an earthquake releases, but it does not decide by itself how much damage a quake does. Depth matters too, and so does what sits directly above it. This earthquake was shallow, and it struck almost directly beneath inhabited towns. That combination turned a moderate tremor into a deadly one. The affected area is the Mantaro Valley, a high Andean river valley that sits at around 3,200 meters above sea level in Peru's Junin region. The two provinces hit hardest are Chupaca and Huancayo. The city of Huancayo, one of Peru's largest Andean cities, with a population of around 456,000, lies roughly 11 kilometers, about 7 miles, east of the epicenter. But the worst damage was not in the city. It was concentrated in the district of Chongos Bajo and its small annex of Pumpunya, along with the towns of Chupaca, Sicaya, and Ahuac. The USGS placed the epicenter about 2 kilometers west-southwest of Sicaya. The IGP located at 14 kilometers south-southwest of Chupaca province. Lima, the capital, sits about 230 kilometers to the northwest, across the mountains. The USGS recorded the quake at magnitude 5.5, at a depth of about 10 kilometers. The IGP first reported it as magnitude 5.1 at a depth of 24 kilometers, then revised its analysis. In its technical report, released around the 21st of July, the IGP corrected the figures to magnitude 5.4 at a depth of just 9.5 kilometers. That revised depth matters. A quake at 9.5 kilometers is what seismologists call shallow, and shallow quakes deliver more of their energy to the surface directly above them, rather than losing it over distance underground. The IGP was clear about the cause. This earthquake came from the reactivation of a geological fault called Altos del Mantaro. A fault is a fracture in the Earth's crust where two blocks of rock can slip past each other, and this one runs for about 50 kilometers along the southwestern edge of the Mantaro basin. Before this event, scientists did not consider that fault a serious threat. Earlier studies, in the IGP's own words, found the fault showed no significant seismic activity. This earthquake changed that assessment. The IGP now states plainly that the fault is active. For years, the region's seismic attention had focused on a different fault, Huaytapallana, which has a record of destructive earthquakes near Huancayo going back to 1969. The damage came from a chain of factors. A shallow rupture, at 9.5 kilometers, released its energy close to the surface, and that surface sat directly beneath the towns of Chongos Bajo and Chupaca. The IGP measured ground shaking there reaching around 75 centimeters per second squared, a measure of how hard the ground was thrown back and forth. Then there is what those towns are built from. Across this part of the Andes, homes are constructed largely of adobe and quincha, mud brick, and a mix of cane and mud. These materials are cheap and traditional, but they hold up poorly under shaking. The IGP concluded that the shaking was, in its words, sufficient to produce the partial or total collapse of structures built with adobe. A shallow quake on an unrecognized fault, directly under vulnerable towns, produced strong surface shaking and collapsed homes across the affected area. That is why a magnitude 5.5 killed 5 people. The human toll, as of the most recent consolidated figures from Peru's National Institute of Civil Defense, INDECI, and the National Emergency Operations Center, COEN, released on the 21st of July, stands at 5 confirmed dead and 32 injured. That death toll was revised downward. Early reports on the 19th and 20th of July had put it at 6, and the corrected balance reconciled a double count to 5. Beyond the casualties, 398 people are recorded as displaced, their homes destroyed or unsafe, and a further 180 as affected. Around 48 homes collapsed, most of them Adobe, with roughly 250 more damaged in early counts. The worst-hit locality remains Pumpunya. Local reporting has stressed one more factor. The quake struck during the Andean frost season, when nighttime temperatures at this altitude fall sharply, which turns a housing crisis for hundreds of displaced people into a health risk as well. The USGS measured the scale of the shaking through its PAGER system, which estimates how many people felt a quake and how hard. It calculated that around 459,000 people experienced very strong shaking. The USGS issued a yellow alert, the level indicating that some casualties and localized damage were likely, but not a large-scale catastrophe. That assessment has broadly matched what happened. One of the most visible losses is a piece of Peru's heritage. In Chongos Bajo, the church and former convent of Santiago de Leon, built in 1565 and designated Monumental Heritage of the Nation, an architectural jewel of the 16th century, was badly damaged. Around 60% of its roof collapsed, its facade was damaged, and its tower is cracked and at risk of coming down. Nearby, a stone cross more than 400 years old, the Cani Cruz, was split in two and lost around 85% of its structure. By contrast, another structure of similar age, the El Copan Chapel, came through the quake intact. The region has no specialists able to restore heritage buildings of this kind, so experts are being brought in from Lima to assess what can be saved. The shaking also reached the systems people rely on. Power went out across several districts: Sapalanga, Chilca, Chongos Bajo, Culhuas, Acostambo, Pazos, and Huarabamba. Most of it was restored by the 19th of July, though around 400 customers in Pumpunya remained without electricity while repairs continued. Several hospitals reported structural cracking: the El Carmen Regional Maternal and Child Hospital, the National Hospital of Central Peru, and the Chapuro Health Center, though officials confirmed no catastrophic failures, and the injured were treated at the Daniel Alcides Carrion National Hospital. 3 advanced medical posts were set up in Pumpunya. Officials reported no damage to the national road network, the railway system, or most telecommunications, which meant emergency crews could keep moving through the affected zone. The USGS estimates total losses at below 1% of Peru's gross domestic product. No official dollar figure has been released. This event is not a single shock. The IGP recorded 10 aftershocks in the first 72 hours after the main quake. 4 of them were felt by residents in Chupaca and Chongos Bajo, and the rest were picked up by the National Seismic Network. The first came quickly, a magnitude 3.7 aftershock about 17 minutes after the main shock. Further tremors, around magnitude 3.4, were reported in the days that followed. Aftershocks matter here for a specific reason. Buildings already weakened by the main quake, cracked adobe walls, a leaning church tower, are more likely to fail under repeated shaking. Each aftershock adds strain to structures that are already compromised, which is why inspections and search operations have to proceed with caution. The IGP also noted signs of soil liquefaction, where shaking causes saturated ground to briefly behave like a liquid, and mass movements, slides of earth, in specific zones. The response moved quickly. The Peruvian Ministry of Defense activated emergency protocols immediately, and more than 30 personnel from the Army's Rapid Disaster Response Company were deployed overnight to Chongos Bajo for search and rescue, debris removal, and security. INDECI and the COAN are coordinating the wider effort, and mayors have been urged to register damage through the COAN so resources can be allocated. On the 20th of July, the government made that response official through Supreme Decree No. 106-2026 PCM, declaring a state of emergency for 60 days across 5 districts, Chongos Bajo and San Juan de Iscos in Chupaca Province, and Chapuro, Vix, and Huaytapallana in Huancayo Province. The Prime Minister, Luis Arroyo, said the declaration would speed the delivery of aid and the start of reconstruction. The head of the IGP, Hernando Tavera, pointed to the quake's shallow depth as the main reason a moderate event caused so much harm. As of the latest verified updates, on the 22nd of July, the confirmed toll is 5 dead, 32 injured, 398 displaced, and 180 affected. Around 48 homes have collapsed. The 500-year-old church stands damaged, its tower at risk. Power is largely back, hospitals are holding, and the roads and rail lines are open. But the aftershock sequence has not ended, and the IGP has told the country that a fault it long considered dormant is active, a finding that reshapes the seismic risk picture for the Mantaro Valley. For now, the danger stays where it began, in the towns of Chongos Bajo, Pumpunya, and Chupaca, where hundreds of people remain displaced, aftershocks continue, and nighttime temperatures remain a threat for those still without a home to return to. Subscribe for more informatic reports.